In the painting tutorial, we're going to learn how to paint glass. And so I've chosen a wine glass. I've set it up against a white background on a white piece of paper, and I'm doing that in order to keep it as uncomplicated as possible. So the first step is, of course, to set up your still life. There it is. And then you need to draw the basic outline on paper. So I have done that here, and I did that using freehand techniques and also French curve to develop the bottom of the wine glass and those precise curves around the top and sides, as well as a straight edge for the stem here. So once you have those established, then look for the brightest points of light that are reflecting on the glass and protect them with Misked. Since we're painting, I can also paint some of those on with white at the end, but I prefer personally to preserve whatever whites I can to keep the color nice and fresh. The next step is to paint the base color. Now when you're talking about the base color of glass on a white surface, it gets a little bit tricky, but even in glass, even against a white surface, there's still color. And so you just have to determine, first of all, by studying your glass, what is the base color. Here what I see is a pale gray. And I'm going to use test strips held up against the actual glass to make sure that I have that color right. Then, when that is determined, I'm going to look closely for the shapes of those colors and put them on in nice, large strokes. Glass is smooth, your strokes have to be smooth and precise. Having protected some of those whites beforehand means that this gets a little bit less complicated. You're not going to see a lot of softening and blending. You just want smooth swaths of solid color. And then at the base here, the stem is cut at an angle. So instead of having a round surface, I have kind of a hexagon. And so those shapes are very precise and straight with very exact edges. I want to paint as much of it as possible with my wide flat brush. And you see how I'm just looking for those shapes of the shadows. And then the last thing to do before that dries is to put on some of these swirly shapes in the flat base here. The rim is darker. I'll probably have to darken that up again with another color. And then I have some round shadows that are being cast. Very interesting. And I'm just taking my time and capturing those little minute details as best I can. And when I'm finished here, I'm going to let that dry completely, not touch it again at all, even if I see some bleeds or problems that I really want to clean up. Just leave it be. We'll come back to it when it's time to move on. When that base coat is dry, then I'm going to put on the lighter secondary coat. So it's the same color, it's just watered down more. I have to have that on though, otherwise the highlights aren't going to show up. So I'm just going to stroke over the entire thing, and this will keep those light areas nice and bright. It also tones down that first coat a little bit so it's not quite so heavy. So now I'm going to let it dry again. Now that second pass is completely dry, so I'm going to go ahead and do the dark shadows now. Mixing up a darker version of that same shadow color. Then I'll test it. Alright. Then it gets a little delicate because these shadows have to be super precise. So I'm going to go at it this way. And notice that I'm not shy about changing the direction of the paper at all. Up here it gets a little bit blurry, so I'm going to just touch those shadow lines with a wet brush and let them blur out on their own. Then as it comes closer to the object that's creating the shadow, the lines get darker and more precise. And I'm going to have a small round ready with that shadow color on it for some of these eensy beatsy little tiny areas in the back here, because you want to keep the tiniest line of reflected light. So you need to get almost to the edge of the glass but not quite there. And then I just need to take my time and do that same kind of thing, putting in these shadows at the base and at the base of the stem here. It's just a matter of going slowly, making sure your colors are right, and filling in each minute little detail. Also, since I'm working from life, another problem could be if I change my point of view. Even if I slump down in my chair, I'm changing the angle of my vision, and the shadows are going to change as well. So I need to be very careful that I stay consistent. It's just like painting and drawing anything else. You get the large shapes in place, and then you add the finicky little details that really help it to come to life. So I'm going to drop in the rest of these shadow shapes. I'll come back to you when the shadows are done. We'll take off the Misket and determine at that point if we need to make any adjustments to the highlights. With the darks in place, you can really see it start to come to life. So then all I need to do is get rid of that masking fluid. And those little speckles, they do a lot to add the finishing bit of realism on the glass as well. The last thing I want to do is go back and emphasize any bright whites that I might need to add by painting them. Since it's hard to see where you're putting the fluid down, sometimes when you take it off you'll see tiny flaws. And you can cover those with white paint or use what I'm using, which is Aqua Cover. Aqua Cover isn't paint, but it's tinted to be the same color as the paper. So you just go through like this, adding those last finishing touches, and that is all there is to painting glass. But you'll notice that even painting glass doesn't change very much at all from painting cats or people or race cars. It doesn't matter. You always follow the same process. Get those big shapes in place first. The outline of the glass, of course, and also then the shapes of the shadows on the glass. Get those in place, make sure they're correct, and then push forward and get a little bit more detail. Then push forward and get more detail. Push forward and get the final finishing touches in place. Don't start with the base of the glass and then adding these finicky little shadows on it, or you're sure to wind up with a finished product that you're not happy with. So once you get that process down, you're really far ahead in art because you can paint or draw anything. It's just a matter of observation and knowing that step process to take, large shapes to small. So that concludes this month's painting tutorial. I hope you've learned something about painting glass you can take away with you. And I hope that you join me next month for another painting and drawing tutorial. Thanks so much for watching.